Ruthless and determined, the Pizarro brothers, four sons of a poor Spanish family, explored and conquered many lands in Central and South America. Led by the oldest brother, Francisco, the Pizarros overthrew the Inca Empire, the largest civilization in the New World. Francisco Pizarro's early life gave no hint of the power and wealth he would later accumulate. Born to an impoverished Spanish family around 1471 and unable to read, he traveled to Panama as a common laborer when he was 38 years old. There, he worked his way up through colonial society and, in 1513, became a captain in Vasco Núñez de Balboa's expedition across Panama to reach the Pacific Ocean. Francisco was rewarded with land, slaves, and government positions in Panama, but it wasn't enough for him. He convinced Charles V, the King of Spain, to support an expedition to explore the lands of Western South America, where an empire of gold was rumored to exist. Francisco invited his brothers, Gonzalo, Juan, and Hernando, to join him. Arriving in South America in November 1532, the Pizarro brothers encountered the wealthy Inca Empire. Based in the Peruvian highlands, the Inca emperors conquered neighboring native tribes, controlling more than 10 million people, stretched over 2,500 miles from the Ecuadorian coast in the north through the Andean mountain chain to its southern tip in modern-day Chile. The emperors mined veins of gold and silver that ran through the Andes to adorn their palaces and temples in the capital city, Cusco. Driven by word of these riches, the Pizarro brothers captured the Inca emperor, Atahualpa. Despite Atahualpa's supporters paying a ransom of enough gold and silver to fill a small house, the brothers executed him as they marched toward Cusco. King Charles hadn't authorized Atahualpa's execution. It seemed that the conquistadors were abusing the powers that he had granted them, so he began to consider ways to rein them in. But King Charles was appeased when in 1533 the brothers captured Cusco. Francisco claimed, "This city is the greatest and the finest ever seen in this country or anywhere in the Indies. We can assure your majesty that it is so beautiful and has such fine buildings that it would be remarkable even in Spain." The Pizarros claimed extraordinary amounts of gold and treasure, but because the Spaniards saw no value in the ornaments created by the Inca goldsmiths, those many exquisite works of art were melted down and lost to history. Despite Cusco's beauty, its high altitude and distance from the sea made it an impractical capital for Francisco. In 1535, he founded the coastal city of Lima as the new capital and settled into his governorship. But his rule would not last long. Tensions between Francisco and his longtime lieutenant, Diego de Almagro, over the distribution of the Inca treasure led to civil war among the conquistadors. The Pizarro brothers captured and executed de Almagro in 1538. But de Almagro's supporters in turn assassinated Francisco on June 26, 1541. Only Gonzalo, the youngest Pizarro brother, remained in Peru. In 1542, to finally curtail the abuses of his conquistadors, King Charles V passed a series of laws called New Laws of the Indies for the good treatment and preservation of the Indians. These laws abolished the encomienda system, taking away the land and slaves granted to the conquistadors and colonists. In response, Gonzalo led an uprising against officials acting on behalf of the King of Spain. For 4 years, this conquistador, not King Charles, held absolute power in Peru. Gonzalo was brutal to natives and Spaniards alike. In just 2 years, he executed 340 Spanish colonists, fearing they opposed him. Eventually, Spanish officials and colonists joined forces to quell Gonzalo's rebellion. In 1548, he surrendered and was beheaded in Cusco. Gonzalo Pizarro was the last of the conquistadors. King Charles's new laws prevailed and put power back in the hands of the monarchy. Although the laws were passed a mere 50 years after Columbus discovered the New World, they were too late to stop the widespread destruction of the native populations. The powerful Pizarro brothers brought down the Inca Empire, the last of the great native empires in the New World. With their conquest of the Inca, European control of South America was nearly complete. It wasn't until the early 1800s, after more than 250 years of Spanish rule, that Peru, along with many other South American countries, declared independence from Spain.